Well, hi, it's me. This is Chapter 5, Rejected and Aroused. Yeah, that's what he called it. Oh, did I mention how infuriating this main character is? Because he really is, and every chapter that passes is just another example of his incredibly, I don't even know how to put it into words. It's not just a toxic mentality. It's not just a self-centered mentality. It's not just a narcissistic mentality. It's like some kind of horrible blend of all the worst possible things that you could think a narcissistic teenager could ever possibly think, and somehow worse, and they're all just together, and they've coalesced into this thing. And the worst part about this, as I have said several times, this would be the kind of thing that you would expect someone who, is writing a terrible character to show you how terrible of a character they are. So this wouldn't be like their main character. Or if it is, you're not supposed to like the main character. That isn't the case here. But let's get into what happened in this chapter, because a lot happened. This is gonna start off with just, I don't know how to tell you to prepare yourself for cringe, like what kind of exercises you have to do, but yeah, you should go ahead and do those, because there's gonna be a lot of that. So first he complains about how his school is so decaying and pathetic. There's a million different reasons for why that could be, but, there's a reason he wants to specifically point that out, which is to say that it's stupid. But a reading from the Book of Onision. Every other person at school's been looking at me nervously for the past few days. To those looks be in response to the fact that I painted my face, half my face, just one half, like a skeleton. It could be the same that I wore the same trench coat. Could also be, I'm sorry, I'm reading this wrong because it's so dumb it's making my brain melt. It could also be that I wore the same trench coat that I had on when I broke John's arm. I didn't even wash my own blood off of it yet. Yeah, that might cause people to stare at you, because you look like an idiot. But that's not the impression that people are getting from him, because of course not. No, then he has to go to the principal's office, and his principal, an education supervisor, someone who knows how to oversee a school, i.e. not just manage the school, but also talk to young people, starts with this wonderful statement. Are you a psychopath or something? Child Psychology 101. Just call him fucking crazy. Yeah, no, that's not weird. But this is Onision's writing, so of course that's where this starts. And he goes on this whole thing about how, you're just rejecting everything that your parents want you to be because you don't want to be like them, and Onion Boy is like, not entirely, because, my mom's dead and you don't even know. And he's like, yeah, okay, so you can't wear that stuff and look like this because that's weird. So you keep insisting on, trying to start fights and instigating shit. So I'm gonna expel you if you don't cut the shit, bro. Well, that's not the exact words he uses, but it doesn't matter because he just doesn't understand. He doesn't understand the deep, complex darkness and pain. Yeah, it's hard being a white kid from the suburbs, let me tell you. It's the worst possible thing. No one has ever suffered like white people from the suburbs. Am I right, fellow human? Fuck off with this shit. So, yeah, he has to go wash off his face paint. Why only half the face? There's a question in it right there. Why only half? I get it. that the cover of this book, which if you're watching this video, you're looking at the cover, that is actually the cover he decided on. No, I'm not kidding, and yes, that is it. But if that's the way you went, just that half. Like, I get that you're doing this artistic thing, so you're only taking a picture of half of your face. So, okay. Well, first off, that's a terrible face paint job. But secondly, only half? Why not just go whole? Unless, specifically the idea is like the fucking cover of this book. It's so iconic to only paint half of your face, guys. Don't you understand? It is super deep and is filled with depth and understanding of the pain and emotion in our souls. Am not faceless creature. Am real human too. Moving on. We eventually get to the point where he finds his, girlfriend unit. Because, I mean, that's what she is. And yeah, this is gonna get, really disgusting if you're not prepared for this. Just hang on. Well, he doesn't like her friends, and he thinks they're all stupid. And cutting quickly back to the principal's question of whether or not you're a psychopath there, Greg, because this is a self-insert, it just clearly is. One of the things was that, a penchant for violence, so maybe he is, because he's going to be edgy, so well, maybe I am, You don't know me, man. You don't know me. It's as an adult magical unicorn from the moon, I can promise you we do know you. This behavior, it's not new. You're not that unique. I realize you think you are, but honey, stop. So, yeah, there's a whole thing where he talks about how he would just totally just stab all her friends because he hates them. Because that's how a healthy, normal person thinks. And then he tells her that they just need to leave. And she's like, what? Now keep in mind, during this conversation that she's having with her friends at this lunch table, her friends who he can't stand and is I'm fairly certain not one of those people who cannot physically respond to something that he doesn't like. He strikes me as one of those people who, whenever somebody starts talking and he doesn't want to hear it, that he just starts going, ugh, that kind of shit. Classy. Yeah, he's like, we should just leave. And she's like, no, I'm talking to my friends. And is sitting on his lap the whole time. Like a pet. Believe me, it gets worse. And at that point, he just refers to them as her, quote, loser idiot friends. And they have an argument. And he gets up and just leaves. And, because, that's how you handle these things as an adult. He just gets up and walks away. And then, now, at this point, you would think, if you're dating someone and they start referring to every friend you ever have as stupid and horrible and all this other shit, you would probably start to reevaluate your relationship, because that's a pretty big red flag. You're not allowed to have any friends? I don't know, man. That's not okay. But of course she doesn't do that, because she just goes after him, because she is not a real girl. She is female construct 74127-A, and she follows after him, and she's like, what can I do to make sure that we stay together? And his response to this is that she has to become super edgy goth like him. Now, the reason I keep insisting that this is like super edgy goth and all this other stuff is because I know several people who even now as adults still consider themselves very goth, and they would find this fucking hilarious. Because it is. This is ridiculous. He doesn't know what that word means. He keeps using it as if he does, and really, he just describes this very specific version of high school emo kid. That's pretty much what it is. It's not really a goth thing, because it's the most generic of what you could possibly think of. It is basically the kind of thing that if you ask someone who has never seen anything that would refer to goth or even emo fashion outside of popular media to describe what someone looks like, and this is the stereotype they come up with. We're at that level. I warned you this is going to get stupid, but it gets stupider. So, he tells her that she has to be all goth, and the reason that this stands out even more for me is, keep in mind that Onision, in all of his writing, does not use spell check or anything like that, so there'll be several misspelled words. Not as bad as some of the other stuff I've read, believe me. But there'll be, like, run-on sentences and misspelled words and things like that. The word goth, in every time he uses it, is capitalized, like it's a proper noun. Now, if you're referring to, like, the Visigoths, perhaps you would be doing something like that. But as a subculture, not really. That's not a thing. We don't capitalize the word punk unless it comes up at the beginning of a sentence, because that's how words work. But he seems to do this a lot. It's really fucking weird. I don't understand it, but he says that she has to come in tomorrow wearing all black clothes and dark makeup. I'm quoting there. And she just replies, ... okay. Because, you know, sacrifice your own individual fashion sense because your owner man says so. And I do mean owner man because we're still getting to that. He didn't believe for a second that she was going to do it, and that, you know, alpha male, whatever, bullshit. And the next day, because we can't save this for the next chapter, we have to have this right here at the end of this chapter. The next day, he comes to school, and, you know what, why don't I just read it to you? Quote, "So the next day as school began, Ashley stood where I knew..." I'll start over, because this is so dumb it's hurting me. As the next day of school began, Ashley stood where she knew I'd see her as I walked in. Her hands were interlocked in front of her thighs. Her butt was slightly perked out. I noticed this because she was wearing black tights. As her eyes came clearly into view, I could see her purple eyeshadow, plum-colored lipstick, and purple glitter on her black jean jacket that she was wearing. Greg has a type. Can you tell? Greg has a very specific type. But that's not the sentence that makes me mostly upset. There are two sentences in this that make me incredibly upset, but let's start with the least worst of the two. Quote, "I was overwhelmed by her gesture of loyalty. I never wanted to physically dominate someone more than I had in that moment." You sicken me, Gregory. You sicken me. But let's continue, because we're not quite done with this bile fucking spewing nonsense. Oh, there's so much more. He ends the chapter, which, to remind you, each chapter has a title, and so does this one. And I'm not entirely sure if I want to know what the phrase rejected and aroused means in this context. I can gather. I hope I'm wrong. But he ends the chapter with this wonderful two-sentence thing. Quote, "Some people can still surprise me. It's all a part of why I haven't found my place at the end of a rope just yet." You know, if this was a study into our main character's mental health, if this story was eventually going to lead to a place in which maybe his friends, except that we never meet them, so I assume he doesn't have any. Especially since he talks about how much he hates talking in general. Sure does do a lot of it. If his peers or his girlfriend, but we know that she's not going to do what I suggest because she doesn't really have a personality, would be bringing him to someone or some place or some sort of conclusion that would involve him actually getting mental help, then I could understand writing something in the way that this is written. I can understand trying to portray our main character as not a very good person, because later we'll go through the steps of understanding what went wrong to lead him to this point and how he got better. That's not going to happen. See, I don't know the exact details of this book, but I know the broad strokes. And I know that this is not like some sort of deep psychological study on a narcissistic individual. This is Onision's high school fantasy fanfiction. This is what he wishes he could have done when he was in high school. And so that's not going to actually fix or change anything. This is what he thinks a good, well-adjusted response to all these things are. Beat up people who you don't like, dominate some female so that you can prove you're an alpha male, and demand that she leave her friends and change everything about herself to become more loyal, quote-unquote. And if at any point in time this sounds incredibly horrible, which it is, and you're thinking, well, at least that's not, something that happens in real life. Oh, honey. No. Just look up anything you need to know about our friend Greg. You'll learn so many things, and none of them are good. But that's enough for this chapter. I can't stand this anymore. I'll see you in the next one. Make sure you do the whole like, comment, subscribe, and if you have anything to send me, you can send it to the subreddit. I see that. I check it every day, so, it's a thing. I love you all so very much, and I'll see you in the next episode. I dread what lays before us. Goodbye!